A perfect beam of sunlight pierces the Great Pyramid only once a year. This is the lost science of monument orientation and cosmic geometry, a forgotten language where stone meets sky. By the end of this journey, you will see ancient wonders not as ruins, but as a sophisticated global technology for speaking with the cosmos. How could cultures separated by oceans build precise celestial clocks into their temples? And what profound secret about our place in the universe did they encode within them? Are we truly the most advanced civilization to have ever walked the earth? This simple vertical stick, a gnomon, casts a moving line of shadow across the earth. For that ancient observer, this was not just a shadow, it was a cosmic clock hand. By marking where the shadow fell at its longest and shortest points, they could map the sun's entire yearly journey. This was the birth of celestial synchrony, the foundational principle behind every oriented monument we will explore. It is the deliberate, painstaking alignment of architecture with the rhythm of the heavens. Think of it not as building toward the sky, but as inviting the sky into the building. On one specific morning each year, the sun would not just shine on a temple, it would enter it, traveling down a precisely engineered corridor to illuminate an inner sanctum. This moment transformed stone into a living calendar and a profound spiritual event. It fused the practical need to track seasons for planting with a philosophical belief that human order should reflect cosmic order. Why go to such extraordinary lengths? Because for these cultures, an alignment was a conversation. A solstice sunrise hitting an altar was the sun god accepting an invitation, a promise of renewal written in light and stone. This required observation over lifetimes, knowledge passed from elder to apprentice, a sacred science dedicated to finding humanity's fixed point within the turning stars. When we see a pyramid face the cardinal directions or a stone circle frame the midsummer moon, we are witnessing the result of this universal human quest, a shared language of alignment spoken across continents. That simple gnomon and its shadow gave rise to the first cosmic blueprint. But to see this science perfected, we must journey to the sands of Egypt, to a structure whose precision remains an open challenge to our modern understanding. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not merely an ancient tomb, it is a three-dimensional textbook written in stone, mathematics, and starlight. Its four sides are aligned to the cardinal directions north, south, east, and west with an accuracy that still astounds surveyors today. The error is less than a 15th of a single degree. To put that in perspective, that is like aiming a laser pointer from New York to Los Angeles and missing the target city by less than the length of a football field. This was not achieved by guesswork. It required a profound, sustained observation of the heavens, likely using the very circumpolar stars that never set, to find true north with such breathtaking exactitude. Yet the celestial conversation embedded within the pyramid goes far beyond its footprint. Look at the narrow shafts, often mistakenly called air vents, that extend from the deep inner chambers. These are not for breathing, they are precisely angled sightlines to the heavens. The southern shaft from the so-called King's Chamber targets the stars of Orion's belt, specifically associated with the Egyptian god Osiris, the lord of the afterlife. The northern shaft aimed directly at Theban, the pole star around 2,500 years before the Common Era, the immovable pivot of the ancient Egyptian sky. This transforms the pyramid from a static tomb into a dynamic instrument. It becomes a stellar resurrection machine, architecturally designed to guide the soul of the departed ruler on a direct path to the eternal, unchanging stars, aligning a human passing with the perpetual cycles of the cosmos. The geometry reaches another staggering layer. The pyramid's base perimeter, divided by twice its height, gives you a number remarkably close to pi, the fundamental constant of a circle. Its proportions appear to scale down the very dimensions of our planet. Whether by profound intention or incredible coincidence, the structure seems to encapsulate advanced geodesic and mathematical knowledge. Theories like the Orion correlation theory, proposed by researchers such as Robert Bovell, suggest the layout of the three main Giza pyramids mirrors the precise arrangement of the three stars in Orion's belt on the ground, permanently cementing a celestial map into the desert plateau. So what are we to make of this, whether you see it as a tomb, a temple of initiation, or something else entirely? The Great Pyramid stands as the ultimate testament to this lost science. It synthesizes solar alignment, stellar targeting, and encoded mathematics into a single, monolithic masterpiece. It raises a haunting question that will follow us to every other site we explore. How did a civilization over 4,000 years ago achieve such peerless precision? And was this knowledge unique to them, or was it part of a far older, perhaps even shared, understanding of the universe? To find clues, we must look beyond Egypt to where other builders whispered the same celestial language into their own mountains of stone. The Great Pyramid speaks a language of solar precision and eternal stars, but the stones on England's Salisbury Plain whisper a different, more complex rhythm. Stonehenge is a monument of cycles within cycles, where the sun shares the stage with a far more enigmatic celestial partner, the moon. Everyone knows the iconic image of the summer solstice sunrise, its first light piercing the heel stone to flood the heart of the circle. That solar alignment is powerful, but it is only the first chapter of the story. To understand Stonehenge fully, you must look beyond the annual journey of the sun and into the slow, 18.6-year dance of the moon. This is the major lunar standstill, the moment when the moon reaches its most extreme northerly and southerly rising points on the horizon, a cycle so long it spans a generation. The architecture here seems meticulously designed to frame these lunar extremes. The four station stones, placed in a rectangle around the main circle, create sightlines that align with these distant lunar pauses. Even more intriguing is the outer ring of Aubrey holes, 56 pits named for their 17th-century discoverer. Researchers have proposed that by moving markers between these pits in a specific pattern, one for each year, the builders could have tracked this long lunar cycle, potentially predicting the awe-inspiring and potentially unsettling events of lunar eclipses. This transforms Stonehenge from a simple solar calendar into a sophisticated multi-generational observatory. It suggests a society deeply attuned to the slower, more mysterious pulses of time, rhythms that may have governed lengthy ritual cycles or the ceremonial remembrance of ancestors. This astronomical insight was propelled into modern debate by the work of archaeoastronomer Gerald Hawkins in the 1960s. Using early computer analysis, he identified multiple alignments, arguing convincingly that Stonehenge was, in his words, a Neolithic computer. But the stones themselves hold another profound mystery, one of sacred geography. The smaller blue stones at the center were transported over 150 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales. This was not a practical choice, it was a sacred one. It implies the builders were not just marking the sky, but connecting their monument to a specific, powerful landscape, perhaps one believed to be charged with terrestrial energy or spiritual significance. So Stonehenge emerges as a unified sacred space, a grand synthesis. It blends the dependable solar year with the mysterious lunar standstill, possibly even planetary movements, into a single architectural instrument. It demonstrates a cultural expression of cosmic principles entirely different from Egypt's, yet born from the same fundamental human impulse to build a fixed point where Earth, sky, and time could meet in meaningful conversation. This pattern of a shared cosmic language, expressed in utterly unique local dialects, becomes even more startling when we cross an ocean. Across the Atlantic, another civilization was engineering its own dialogue with the heavens on a breathtaking urban scale. The vast silent metropolis of Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, rises from the Valley of Mexico not as a haphazard collection of temples, but as a single, unified cosmic diagram etched into the earth. Its entire layout is a masterclass in sacred geometry. The central axis, the Street of the Dead, runs for miles, but it does not point to true north. Instead, it is offset by 15.5 degrees to the east. This was no surveying error. Researchers believe this precise angle aligns with the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster, a celestial marker of profound importance across Mesoamerica, signaling the beginning of the agricultural cycle and a time of ceremonial renewal. The city was oriented not to the static poles but to a moving, meaningful event in the living sky. The colossal Pyramid of the Sun, with a base nearly identical in size to the Great Pyramid of Giza, anchors this celestial plan. Its western face is perfectly oriented to capture the sunset on the 2 days each year when the sun passes directly overhead, the zenith passages that divide the solar year with local precision. The adjacent Pyramid of the Moon completes a powerful geometric relationship, creating a sacred landscape where architecture frames the horizon in a deliberate, symbolic conversation. But the cosmic vision of Teotihuacan's unknown builders extends even further. Astonishingly, the distances between the city's major monuments appear to scale down the orbital distances of the planets in our solar system. The Pyramid of the Sun may represent our own sun, with other structures placed at proportional intervals mirroring the orbits of inner planets. This transforms the entire city from a mere dwelling place into a functioning model of the cosmos, a grand statement that human order must mirror celestial order. Every citizen living within this grid was, knowingly or not, participating in a daily ritual of alignment, their lives framed by avenues and plazas that reflected the harmony of the heavens. This raises a profound question about the builders themselves. To conceive and execute such a meticulously planned metropolis, spanning over 8 square miles, without the use of the wheel, metal tools, or even a known written language, implies the existence of a supremely sophisticated scientific priesthood. This was not a society ruled by superstition, but by a deep, empirical, and likely secretive understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and geodesy. The knowledge required to survey this terrain, to maintain these precise alignments over generations of construction, speaks of a lost school of master architects for whom building a city was an act of cosmic consecration. What happened to this profound knowledge, and did it vanish entirely, or did it travel? But these alignments are only the first layer of the code. To truly understand the monuments, you must learn to see the invisible lines, the silent mathematics etched into their very bones. This is the realm of sacred geometry, where shape and proportion were not matters of aesthetic choice, but of cosmic law. Ancient architects believed certain forms and ratios held inherent power, resonating with the fundamental structure of reality itself. At its heart are 2 primal shapes, the circle representing the heavens' cycles and the infinite, and the square symbolizing the earth, stability, and the material world. Combine them and you create the mandala, a universal pattern of cosmic order found in the domes of Buddhist stupas, the floor plans of medieval cathedrals, and the circular stone arrangements of Native American medicine wheels. It is a blueprint for unity, a diagram showing the sacred marriage of sky and ground within a single, harmonious design. Yet the most fascinating key to this geometric language is a number, approximately 1.618, known as the golden ratio or phi. This is not just a mathematician's abstraction. You can find it in the elegant spiral of a nautilus shell, the branching pattern of a tree, and the swirling arms of a distant galaxy. It is a fundamental pattern of growth and beauty in the natural world. When ancient builders discovered this ratio repeated in nature, they saw it as the signature of a divine creator. To incorporate phi into architecture was to mimic the work of the cosmos itself. Look at the Parthenon in Athens. The proportions of its facade, the relationship of its width to its height, closely approximate this golden mean. Centuries later, master builders of Gothic cathedrals used these same ratios to determine the soaring heights of their naves and the delicate tracery of their rose windows. They were not just building churches, they were composing visual hymns in stone, using mathematical harmony to induce a state of awe and spiritual elevation in anyone who entered. This geometric thinking extended far beyond single buildings. Researchers like John Mitchell proposed that many ancient sacred sites were not placed randomly, but were positioned according to vast, invisible geometric grids stretched across the landscape. Imagine lines of energy connecting stone circles, hilltop temples, and sacred springs into massive triangles, pentagrams, or alignments spanning hundreds of miles. Whether these patterns were intentional or emerged from our own pattern-seeking minds is a deep mystery, but the intent behind the principle is clear. By using sacred geometry, a builder transformed a structure from a mere shelter into a tuned instrument. The space itself was designed to vibrate in harmony with a deeper universal order, to align the mind and spirit of the inhabitant with the very principles of creation. This raises a practical and profound question. If they were aiming for such celestial and geometric precision, what tools did they use? How did they translate these cosmic blueprints from vision into reality, moving mountains of stone with seemingly impossible accuracy? Their celestial blueprints demanded tools of equal elegance. Without a single laser or theodolite, these ancient architects achieved staggering precision using instruments born from patient observation of the natural world. The most fundamental was the gnomon, that simple vertical stick, but its use went far beyond marking a shadow's noon length. By carefully tracking where the shortest shadow of the day pointed over many cycles, an observer could pinpoint true north with remarkable accuracy, laying the cardinal foundation for an entire temple complex. For the stars, the Egyptians developed the Merkit, a beautifully simple device. It was a forked sighting stick used with a suspended plumb bob, a string with a weight. An observer would wait for a specific bright star, like Sirius, to cross an imaginary north-south line in the sky, the meridian. By aligning the Merkit's fork with the star and ensuring the plumb bob hung perfectly straight, they could establish a true celestial reference line on the ground, a process repeated night after night to refine their alignments to a razor's edge. Yet perhaps the most versatile tool in this ancient kit was something we might overlook entirely: a simple cord. Across cultures, from the Druid rope stretchers of legend to the Vedic scholars of India, knotted measuring ropes were the surveyor's chains of the ancient world. Texts like the Indian Sulbasutras provide explicit instructions. By marking a cord in a ratio of 3, 4, and 5 units and staking it out to form a triangle, you instantly create a perfect right angle, the cornerstone of square foundations and precise alignments. These cords could be used to scribe perfect circles, to transfer measurements, and to scale up geometric designs from a small diagram to a monumental footprint. This reveals the true nature of their science. It was not magic, but a profound mastery of first principles, combining generations of naked-eye astronomical data with practical, hands-on geometry. The knowledge required to use these tools effectively, to understand which star to sight, when to measure a shadow, or how to apply a geometric ratio, points to something deeper than common folk knowledge. It suggests the existence of specialized schools or priestly orders, initiatory lineages where this empirical science was guarded, refined, and passed down. This mastery, appearing in refined forms across separated continents, inevitably leads us to a tantalizing and controversial question. Was this a case of independent genius, of different human minds separately discovering the same universal laws of sky and geometry? Or does the shared sophistication of the tools and the results point to faint threads of connection, traces of a far older, perhaps even common, source of understanding that once flowed across the ancient world? From the gnommon's shadow to the golden ratio, we see a pattern repeated across the globe. In Ireland, the 5,000-year-old passage tomb of Newgrange is engineered so that for just a few minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, a narrow beam of sunlight travels 60 feet down a stone-lined tunnel to illuminate its central chamber. Over in the American Southwest at Choco Canyon, a natural rock formation known as the Sun Dagger acts as a precise celestial calendar. On the summer solstice, a sliver of sunlight bisects a large spiral petroglyph carved on a cliff face, and on the equinoxes, a dagger of light perfectly frames it with more subtle markers for the lunar standstill cycle. These sites, separated by vast oceans and millennia, are speaking the same cosmic language. This undeniable global pattern forces upon us one of history's great debates. Did humanity's greatest minds, isolated from one another, simply arrive at the same brilliant conclusions by independently watching the same sky? Or does this point to a shared heritage, a thread of forgotten knowledge connecting these distant cultures? This is the core mystery of independent invention versus diffusion. The mainstream academic perspective offers a compelling and elegant explanation. It argues that any intelligent agrarian society, deeply dependent on the seasons, would inevitably turn its gaze upward. The cyclical motions of the sun, moon, and stars are not subtle secrets. They are the most prominent features of the natural world. Identifying the solstices, the equinoxes, and the brightest star clusters is a logical, almost inevitable step for any culture seeking to track time, plan harvests, and find meaning in the cosmos. From that common starting point, each society would then express that celestial understanding through its own unique architectural and cultural lens, leading to the beautiful diversity we see from Stonehenge to Teotihuacan. The similarities in targets, therefore, are not evidence of contact, but proof of a shared human intelligence observing a shared reality. Yet another school of thought finds this explanation incomplete. Popularized by researchers like Graham Hancock, the diffusionist theory suggests the parallels are too specific, the geometric and astronomical knowledge too sophisticated, to have sprung up repeatedly from scratch. This view proposes the possibility of a lost chapter in human history, perhaps a sophisticated maritime culture or even an advanced civilization that flourished near the end of the last ice age. After a great cataclysm, like a rapid rise in sea levels, the survivors of this culture, so the theory goes, could have traveled the globe, seeding the foundational knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and monument building among emerging hunter-gatherer societies. This would explain not just the alignments, but the sudden, seemingly inexplicable leaps in architectural skill seen at places like Giza or Sacsayhuaman. The debate is not merely academic. It challenges the very timeline of human progress and our understanding of cultural connection. It asks us to consider whether ancient peoples were isolated geniuses or participants in a forgotten, global conversation. The geometric precision we have seen, the use of the same mathematical constants and alignment principles, does give one pause. Could the consistent choice of the Pleiades or Orion's belt as celestial markers be purely coincidental? Or does it hint at a common, perhaps much older, symbolic tradition? This puzzle deepens immeasurably when we introduce a final, enigmatic layer to the monuments, one that moves beyond the sky and into the very earth beneath our feet. The geometric alignments point skyward, but what if the monuments were also listening to a whisper from deep within the earth itself? This brings us to one of the most captivating and controversial ideas in alternative history, the concept of ley lines. In the 1920s, an English amateur archaeologist named Alfred Watkins had a sudden revelation while surveying the rolling countryside of Herefordshire. He noticed that ancient sites, from standing stones and old churches to hilltop forts and holy wells, often fell in startlingly straight alignments across miles of landscape. He called these alignments ley lines, suggesting they were remnants of ancient trading paths or ceremonial routes. But for later researchers, Watkins's observation was just the beginning. They proposed that these lines were far more than old roads. They were invisible channels of a subtle terrestrial energy, a kind of life force flowing through the planet. In this view, the great monuments were not placed randomly along these lines, but at powerful nodes or intersections, like acupuncture points on the Earth's body. Think of places like Glastonbury Tor in England, a solitary hill steeped in Arthurian legend, or the red rock vortex sites of Sedona, Arizona, where visitors commonly describe feelings of peace, energy, or heightened awareness. In Japan, the ancient capital of Kyoto was meticulously laid out according to Chinese geomancy to channel beneficial earth energies. Proponents argue this is not mere coincidence, but evidence of a lost science, a global tradition of sensing and building upon these hidden currents. The idea suggests ancient builders perceived the Earth as a living, breathing entity. Their site selection, then, would have been a complex calculus, balancing celestial sightlines with terrestrial intuition. They might have sought out locations with unique geophysical properties, places with magnetic anomalies, strong underground water flows, or even unusual acoustic qualities where sound behaved in strange ways. This practice, known as geomancy, was the art of harmonizing human structures with the latent energies of the land. If such a tradition existed, it would represent the ultimate expression of this lost science, a holistic architecture achieving a triple alignment. A temple would be oriented to the cycles of the sky, proportioned by sacred geometry, and grounded upon a powerful node of earth energy, marrying cosmic order, mathematical harmony, and terrestrial spirit into a single, resonant space. Of course, mainstream archaeology remains deeply skeptical. Critics rightly point out that with thousands of ancient sites dotting any landscape, finding straight lines connecting a few of them is almost a statistical certainty, a classic example of human pattern seeking. There is no scientific instrument, they note, that has reliably detected these proposed energy currents. Yet, even if the literal lines on a map are an illusion, the underlying intuition they represent is profoundly important. The ley line hypothesis, at its core, challenges us to expand our understanding of why a location was considered sacred. It moves beyond the purely visual and astronomical into the realm of the sensory and the experiential. It asks us to consider that the builder's genius may have included a sensitivity to the feeling of a place, an awareness of the living earth that our modern, instrument-driven science is only beginning to tentatively explore. This leads us to the final and perhaps most personal layer of this mystery. What was the ultimate purpose of this immense global project of alignment? Was it merely about tracking seasons, or was it attempting something far more ambitious, something that speaks directly to the human spirit and its longing for connection? This drive to align with cosmic forces found its most complete and beautiful expression in the sacred space of the temple. More than a building, it was conceived as a living model of the universe itself, a microcosm where every stone and corridor held symbolic meaning. In the sprawling complex of Karnak in Egypt, the entire temple axis was engineered to capture the first light of the winter solstice sunrise. As that golden beam traveled down the central path, it would illuminate the inner sanctuary, symbolically recharging the divine presence within. The great hypostyle hall, with its dense forest of towering columns carved to resemble papyrus and lotus plants, was not merely grand architecture. It was a recreation of the primeval marsh from which Egyptian myth said all life first emerged. To walk through it was to walk back to the moment of creation, surrounded by stone flora that connected the present to the timeless origin of everything. This concept of the temple as a cosmic map transcends any single culture. In the Hindu and Buddhist traditions, magnificent structures like Cambodia's Angkor Wat or Indonesia's Borobudur are explicit architectural representations of Mount Meru, the sacred mountain believed to stand at the very center of all cosmological realms. This mountain is the axis mundi, the world axis connecting the earthly plane with the celestial spheres above and the underworlds below. The pilgrim's journey is built into the very design. At Borobudur, one does not simply enter and pray. The visitor ascends level by level, walking in a mindful clockwise circumambulation around massive terraces adorned with over 2,000 relief panels and hundreds of statues. This physical ascent mirrors a spiritual one, a progression through the layers of consciousness, from the world of desires at the base, through the world of forms in the middle, toward the formless realm of enlightenment at the summit. The temple is the path. This transformative intent is governed by a precise mathematical order. The entire layout is often based on a sacred diagram called a mandala, a geometric blueprint of the cosmos that dictates every proportion. From the overall footprint down to the exact width of a doorway, every dimension follows a harmonic ratio. This was not artistic whim, it was spiritual technology. The goal was to construct a space so perfectly in tune with cosmic principles that it would resonate with the individual within it. The architecture, the orientation to cardinal directions or celestial events, and the encompassing symbolic art all worked in concert. They were tools to quiet the ordinary mind, to dissolve the sense of a separate self, and to guide awareness toward a direct experience of a deeper, unified order. The temple was an active instrument for inner transformation. It used the silent language of geometry and alignment to create an environment where enlightenment was not just discussed, but felt and approached. This reveals the ultimate purpose behind the lost science. It was never just about tracking stars for a harvest, though that was vital. It was about using that celestial harmony as a template for human consciousness. By building a universe in miniature and then stepping inside it, the ancient seeker, and perhaps the modern one as well, could remember their own place within the vast, beautiful, and intelligently patterned whole. The temple's silent geometry was a path to the inner universe, but this sacred science also had a profoundly practical heartbeat. For the great agricultural civilizations, survival itself depended on a precise conversation with the sky. Knowing exactly when the rains would come, when the river would flood, or when the first frost might arrive was not a matter of philosophy. It was the difference between abundance and hardship. To solve this, they built calendars not of paper but of stone, embedding the passage of time directly into the landscape with monumental authority. High in the Andes at Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone stands as a perfect example. This exquisitely carved granite pillar, whose name means the hitching post of the sun, acts as a sophisticated sundial. On the equinoxes, the sun stands directly overhead, casting no shadow at all, a moment of perfect celestial balance. On the solstices, the shadow it casts points in specific, marked directions. This was not an abstract sculpture, it was a working agricultural instrument, a public clock that told an entire community when to prepare the soil and when to gather the harvest. This pattern of light and shadow repeats across the Americas. Throughout the Southwest, cultures engineered what we now call sun daggers and light boxes. At Choco Canyon, a slit between two massive rock slabs allows a slender blade of sunlight to crawl across a spiral petroglyph. It only bisects the center of that spiral on the summer solstice and perfectly frames it on the equinoxes. In Mesoamerica, the architectural ambition grew even more complex. The Caracol Observatory at Chichen Itza is a striking, windowed tower rising from the jungle floor. Its narrow slits are not random openings. They are precisely aligned to frame the sunset on the vernal equinox, and more remarkably, to track the extreme rising and setting points of the planet Venus. For the Maya, Venus was not just a bright star, it was a deity associated with war and rain. Predicting its cycles was essential for both ceremony and statecraft. These structures transformed esoteric knowledge into public spectacle. On the appointed day, the community could gather and witness the truth for themselves, as sunlight performed its predicted miracle, illuminating a carved symbol or pouring through a sacred window. The calendar was no longer a rumor or a guess. It was a fact written in light upon stone, immutable and undeniable. This institutionalization of cosmic knowledge created powerful social glue. It organized time, labor, and ritual into a coherent, predictable whole, allowing societies to plan, build, and thrive. But this knowledge also conferred immense power. The priestly class who guarded the secrets of alignment held the keys to time itself. Their ability to predict an eclipse or the return of a sacred star cycle would have seemed, to the populace, like a form of divine conversation or even control over the gods. This practical application of celestial science became the bedrock of civilization's structure. It demonstrated that understanding the cosmos was not separate from governing society. It was its very foundation. The monuments were clocks, calendars, and instruments of awe, weaving together the need to eat with the need to believe, and in doing so, they stabilized the world. Yet, this hard-won stability was always fragile, resting on the continued observation of a predictable sky. What would happen if that sky itself seemed to turn against them, if the cosmic order they so meticulously mirrored suddenly appeared to break? But a civilization's entire calendar could be built upon a foundation of celestial stability that is, from our human perspective, an illusion. The Earth's axis is not a fixed rod pointing eternally at Polaris. It is a spinning top, slowly wobbling through space in a cycle that takes 25,920 years to complete. This is the precession of the equinoxes, the grandest and most subtle of all cosmic clocks. It means that over centuries, the position of the sun against the backdrop of stars on an equinox or solstice slowly drifts backward through the 12 constellations of the zodiac, completing one full circuit in what ancient philosophers called the Great Year or Platonic Year. No single human lifetime, no single empire could ever witness more than a tiny fraction of this immense cycle. Yet, the haunting possibility emerges that our ancestors were not just aware of it, but that they encoded this knowledge into the very bones of their myths and monuments. Consider the Sphinx of Giza gazing eternally eastward. Some researchers like Robert Bovell and Graham Hancock have proposed a radical correlation. They suggest that around 10,500 years before the Common Era, the constellation of Leo would have risen directly in front of the Sphinx at the spring equinox dawn. If the Sphinx's lion body is indeed meant to represent Leo, then its orientation could be a frozen moment in this slow processional dance, a stone marker saying, "Look, when Leo rose here, we built this." Mainstream Egyptology firmly dates the Sphinx to the Old Kingdom, but the idea persists as a powerful symbol of this deeper mystery. The evidence is not only in stone, but in story. Cultures worldwide speak of vast, repeating cycles of time. The Hindu texts describe the 4 yugas, immense ages of creation and dissolution that span millions of years. The myth of the phoenix consumed by fire and reborn from its ashes symbolizes not just renewal, but the passing of entire world ages. Even Plato wrote of a great year that brings cataclysmic renewal. These are not tales of annual harvests, they are narratives of cosmic epochs. Could they be the vehicle for preserving unimaginably long-term astronomical data? Encoding the precession into myth and ritual would be a genius act of cultural memory. It transforms a story from simple entertainment into a durable container for scientific observation, passed orally from generation to generation across hundreds of lifetimes. The priest who recited the epic of a dying and reborn god might, in a symbolic layer understood only by initiates, also be tracking the sun's slow crawl from one zodiacal house to another. This idea elevates the lost science from practical astronomy to something far more profound, a form of long-term cosmic custodianship. It suggests that ancient cultures saw themselves not just as living within time, but as responsible for remembering its grandest rhythm, acting as the memory of the Earth itself across millennia. Whether this knowledge was painstakingly recorded over generations or inherited from a far older source remains the deepest question of all, but it reframes every aligned monument we have discussed. They were not just calendars for the year, but perhaps also mile markers on a 26,000-year journey, stone pages in a galactic history book we are only now beginning to decipher. The slow precession of the stars found its echo in the human voice, in stories told around fires for thousands of years. Myths are not mere fairy tales, they are often the narrative vessels for complex astronomical information, a cosmic code written in the language of heroes and gods. Look up at the winter sky and you might see the constellation Orion, the mighty hunter. In Greek myth, he was slain by the sting of a scorpion, and the gods placed them in opposite parts of the heavens, so that as Orion sets in the west, the constellation Scorpio rises in the east, enacting their eternal chase across the celestial dome each and every year. This is not just a pretty story, it is a functional mnemonic, a way to remember the seasonal movement of the stars. The pattern deepens in ancient Egypt. The intricate myth of Osiris, the murdered god-king, his devoted wife Isis, and their avenging son Horus, encodes a profound celestial drama. Osiris was linked to the constellation Orion. His faithful wife Isis was associated with Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, which rises just before Orion in the dawn. Their son Horus, the falcon-headed sky god, was embodied by the sun itself. The entire mythic cycle of death, mourning, and rebirth mirrors the annual disappearance and reappearance of these celestial bodies, tying the emotional narrative of a culture directly to the rhythm of the cosmos. This practice of encoding the sky into story is a global phenomenon. For the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, the dream time is not a distant past but a continuous, living reality. Their intricate stories map the landscape and the sky in perfect, inseparable detail. A tale about the Seven Sisters, a star cluster we call the Pleiades, might also describe the location of a specific waterhole, the behavior of certain animals, and the arrival of seasonal winds. These stories were practical guides for survival, a seamless blend of navigation chart, seasonal almanac, and sacred lore, all memorized and transmitted orally across countless generations. By studying the mythic motifs associated with specific monuments, we can begin to decode their intended function. The stunning silver Gundestrup cauldron, found in a Danish bog, is covered with mysterious imagery of gods, animals, and processions. Some researchers see in its panels not just Celtic artistry, but a symbolic language relating to lunar mythology and cycles, a ritual object that may have been used to teach or enact cosmic principles. This intertwining of story and science reveals a holistic world, now foreign to us. For these cultures, the celestial, the terrestrial, and the human narrative were inseparable, a unified field of knowledge. A farmer planting his seeds was participating in the myth of Osiris. A hunter following a star was walking a path laid down by ancestral beings. This unity has been fractured by modern specialization, where astronomy, geography, and storytelling live in separate academic departments. We have gained incredible precision, but we may have lost the profound sense of belonging that comes from seeing your own life, your community's rituals, and the turning of the stars as chapters in a single, sacred story. Reconstructing this lost unity is not about abandoning science, but about listening to the ancient myths with new ears, hearing in them not primitive superstition, but a sophisticated, embodied science of meaning, a way of knowing that connected the human heart directly to the heartbeat of the universe. That profound unity of story and sky was not just seen, it was heard. The silent stones we have been studying may have been designed as instruments, carefully tuned to the physics of sound itself. This is the emerging field of archaeoacoustics, and it reveals that ancient sacred spaces were often engineered for specific auditory experiences, adding a vital and often overlooked sensory layer to their cosmic design. Consider the grand staircase of the Mayan pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. If you stand at its base and clap your hands, the sound does not return as a dull echo. It comes back as a sharp, chirping trill, an uncanny mimicry of the sacred Quetzal bird, a creature deeply associated with the feathered serpent god for whom the pyramid is named. This was no accident of construction. The precise spacing and angle of the stone steps were calculated to filter and shape sound waves into this specific sonic symbol, turning a human gesture into a divine reply. This acoustic intentionality reaches even deeper. On the Mediterranean island of Malta, the subterranean labyrinth known as the Hal-Saflieni Hypogeum is a three-level complex carved from solid limestone around 5,000 years ago. Certain of its oval chambers exhibit extraordinary acoustic properties. When a deep male voice chants at a specific resonant frequency, around 110 Hz, the sound does not just fill the room, it seems to amplify and surround you, vibrating through the very stone in a palpable, physical way. Researchers have noted that this particular frequency is associated with shifts in brain activity, potentially encouraging states of calm or heightened focus. Across the sea at Ireland's Newgrange, the Long Passage tomb also resonates powerfully at specific low tones. In the ancient Greek theaters, like the one at Epidaurus, the acoustics are so precise that a coin dropped on the stage can be heard clearly in the topmost row, an engineering marvel that allowed the spoken word to carry with crystal clarity to thousands. What does this tell us? It strongly implies that the master builders of these sites possessed a sophisticated, empirical understanding of sound wave physics. They were not merely stacking stones for visual effect, they were sculpting space to control resonance. This transforms our understanding of ritual. Imagine a ceremony within one of these tuned chambers. The rhythmic pounding of a drum, the deep, unison chanting of voices hitting that resonant frequency, the sustained notes of a simple flute. Within the architecturally amplified sound field, these vibrations would not just be heard with the ears, they would be felt in the chest and the bones. This somatic, full-body experience could have been a powerful technology for shifting collective consciousness, guiding participants toward shared trance states, deep meditation, or a profound sense of unity. The space itself became an active participant in the ceremony, a resonator that harmonized the internal vibration of the human body with the external vibration of the monument. This adds a breathtaking dimension to the lost science of cosmic geometry. It was not a purely visual astronomy of aligning sightlines to distant stars. It was a holistic, multisensory sacred science. The goal was to create a total environment where every aspect worked in concert. Geometry aligned the structure with celestial cycles, sacred proportions created visual harmony, and acoustic engineering tuned the space to specific vibrational frequencies. The monument thus became a grand interface, a device designed to align human consciousness simultaneously with the macrocosm of the stars above and the microcosm of resonant Earth below. It asks us to listen to these ancient places with new ears, to hear in their silence the echoes of a science that sought not just to map the cosmos, but to sing in harmony with it. The silent resonance of a tuned chamber connects the human body to the earth. But what if these monuments were also sending signals across vast, empty distances, not through sound but through sight? This is the Navigational Hypothesis, a compelling idea that reimagines megalithic structures not only as temples and calendars, but as essential sea marks for ancient mariners. Imagine the perspective of a sailor in a wooden vessel navigating the open Mediterranean thousands of years ago. Land is a precious and often perilous memory. On the horizon, a distinctive stone tower rises from a high coastal cliff. This is not merely a village lookout, it could be a carefully positioned navigational beacon. The mysterious Nurag towers of Sardinia, with their unique conical forms, or the imposing Talaiotic settlements on Minorca, often command sweeping views of the sea. From such a vantage point, specific alignments between stones or window-like openings could have provided sightlines to distant, barely visible islands, or framed the rising point of a key navigational star like Polaris or the bright star Arcturus. For a sailor, spotting a known alignment from the sea would confirm his position, while from the land, watching a star set between two stones would point the way to the next safe harbor. This theory proposes a dual-purpose architecture, serving both the spiritual needs of a settled community and the practical demands of an interconnected maritime world. It extends to the provocative idea of a prehistoric global navigation network. Could monuments on coastlines from the British Isles to the Caribbean have acted as a chain of waypoints? Their alignments might not just track solstices but point deliberately along known sea routes, creating a stone map etched across continents. If advanced seafaring cultures like the Phoenicians, the Minoans of Crete, or even earlier, unknown explorers used a common system of celestial navigation, they might have established or adopted standardized marker sites. This transforms our view from isolated wonders to interconnected nodes in a vast, intelligent web of communication and travel. A stone circle in coastal Portugal, a mound in Brazil, or a platform in India could become part of a single, sprawling system, suggesting a level of global interaction and shared technical knowledge in deep antiquity far greater than conventional history typically allows. It is a thrilling vision that connects the land-based science of cosmic orientation directly to the greatest mystery of all, the possibility of ancient transoceanic contact. Yet, for such a radical redrawing of the historical map, we must also listen carefully to the counter-arguments from mainstream scholarship. The Navigational Hypothesis paints a breathtaking picture of a connected ancient world, yet it is a vision met with deep skepticism from the very field dedicated to uncovering our past. Mainstream archaeology offers a powerful and necessary counterpoint, one grounded in caution and cultural context. Scholars remind us that with thousands of ancient sites scattered across any landscape, finding straight lines or celestial alignments connecting a few of them is often a statistical inevitability, a classic case of our own human brains seeking patterns where none were intended. This process is sometimes called selective data fitting, where we highlight the few alignments that work while ignoring the many that do not. A doorway facing east might simply welcome the morning sun for warmth and practical illumination, not to mark a precise equinox. The primary function of these colossal projects from this perspective was profoundly human and immediate. They were engines of social and political power. Mobilizing thousands of people to build a pyramid or raise a stone circle created a unified labor force, demonstrated the ruler's divine mandate, and forged a powerful center for community identity and ritual. The monument itself was the message, a statement of control and cohesion written in stone. Astronomical functions, where they undeniably exist, were likely secondary and deeply symbolic, woven into the fabric of mythology and religion rather than standing as a separate, precise science. Esteemed scholars like Anthony Aveni, a pioneer in the field of archaeoastronomy, emphasize this integrated worldview. Ancient people were brilliant and keen observers of their environment, but their observations of the sky were inseparable from their stories of gods, their agricultural practices, and their social structures. Their science was not a discrete discipline as we know it today. It was a holistic way of understanding their place in a living, meaningful cosmos. Theories that overlook this rich cultural context in favor of speculative, often anachronistic, technological explanations are sometimes dismissed with the term pyramidiosy, a label underscoring the frustration with ideas perceived as ignoring the people behind the monuments. This grounded perspective is not meant to diminish the wonders of the ancient world, but to deepen our respect for them. It reminds us that these were pragmatic societies with multifaceted motivations. The true mystery, therefore, may not be a single lost science of high precision, but something equally profound: the delicate and beautiful balance each culture struck between practical function, potent social symbolism, and genuine, observed astronomical harmony. Navigating this triad between what was built, why it was built, and how it connected to the sky is where the most authentic understanding lies. The monuments stand as silent libraries, but the living knowledge that filled them was never meant for everyone. This sophisticated science of alignment was a closely guarded treasure, protected within the inner sanctums of secret societies and exclusive priestly castes. Think of the ancient Egyptian mystery schools, where initiates underwent rigorous training not just in ritual, but in astronomy, mathematics, and the sacred principles of harmony. Across the world, the Druids of Celtic Europe were the intellectual elite, their teachings passed orally from master to disciple, forbidding written records to protect their power. In India, the Vedic rishis or seers were the custodians of cosmic knowledge, composing hymns that encoded astronomical data within layers of spiritual metaphor. These were not just religious leaders, they were the scientists, engineers, and philosophers of their age, holding the keys to a unified understanding of reality. The transmission of this knowledge was not a simple lecture, it was an initiation, a transformative rite of passage designed to alter the consciousness of the seeker. The monuments themselves served as the ultimate three-dimensional textbooks and the final testing grounds. An initiate might be led into a pitch-black passage tomb like Newgrange on the eve of the winter solstice. To emerge at dawn as a single beam of sunlight pierced the 60-foot corridor to illuminate the inner chamber was not just to witness a celestial event. It was to experience a profound metaphor of spiritual rebirth, physically walking from darkness into light in perfect synchrony with the sun's own symbolic rebirth. The geometric proportions we admire were not merely aesthetic, they were puzzles to be solved, codes to be understood from the inside out. This culture of secrecy served multiple purposes. It maintained a powerful social hierarchy, ensuring that those who governed were seen as intermediaries with the divine cosmic order. It also protected the knowledge from dilution, distortion, or misuse, treating it as a sacred trust rather than common information. But this protective secrecy came with a profound vulnerability. When these traditions were violently disrupted by foreign invasion, swept away by radical religious change, or simply collapsed from within, the living thread was severed. The core of the experiential science could vanish almost overnight. What remained were the magnificent architectural shells, the silent stones stripped of their original meaning, and fragments of the knowledge scattered into folklore and esoteric traditions. Later movements like Freemasonry or Hermetic philosophy preserved the geometric symbolism, the compass and square, the pursuit of light, but often as philosophical principles divorced from their original celestial context. The true loss, then, was not of the monuments themselves, for they endure. The loss was of the living, embodied understanding of their purpose, the felt connection between the human spirit, the resonant chamber, and the turning stars. This is the gap we now strive to bridge, not by claiming to rediscover a single secret doctrine, but through patient, interdisciplinary research that listens to the stones, decodes the myths, and respects the ingenuity of those ancient minds who sought to build heaven on earth. The silent stones had kept their secrets for millennia, but a new kind of listener finally arrived. In the late 1800s, a British astronomer named Sir Norman Lockyer turned his scientific gaze away from the distant stars and toward the weathered monoliths on Salisbury Plain. He was not a mystic but a man of measurement, and he brought the tools of his trade to Stonehenge. By carefully surveying the monument's layout and calculating the positions of the sun and moon centuries prior, Lockyer proposed something radical for his time. He argued that the alignment of the stones was not random but deliberate, engineered to frame specific celestial events like the summer solstice sunrise. His work, published in 1894, was a quiet revolution. It planted the seed of a radical idea that ancient monuments could be read as astronomical instruments, and it laid the first stone in the foundation of a new discipline. The field needed a meticulous surveyor, and it found one in Alexander Thom. In the mid-20th century, this Scottish engineer embarked on an epic, solitary quest. He personally surveyed over 300 stone circles and rows across Britain and France, taking thousands of precise measurements with theodolite and tape. What Thom discovered was a pattern of startling consistency. He proposed that these diverse sites were built using a standardized unit of measurement, which he called the megalithic yard, roughly 2.72 of our feet. More astonishingly, he presented evidence that the builders used sophisticated Pythagorean geometry centuries before the Greeks formalized it, constructing ellipses, egg-shaped rings, and complex flattened circles with remarkable accuracy. Thom's work was controversial, and not all his conclusions have stood the test of time, but his immense dataset forced academia to take the astronomical hypothesis seriously. He transformed the conversation from romantic speculation into a problem of engineering and mathematics. Across the Atlantic, the story unfolded differently. In Mesoamerica, researcher Anthony Aveni approached the puzzle not just with a surveyor's eye, but with an ethnographer's heart. He understood that to decode the alignments of Teotihuacan or Chichen Itza, one had to also listen to the myths, study the surviving codices, and understand the cultural context. Aveni and his colleagues systematically documented alignments, demonstrating how architecture, calendars, and cosmology were woven into a single, coherent worldview. He showed that the Caracol Tower was a precise Venus observatory, and that the grid of Teotihuacan mirrored cosmic principles. His great contribution was to bridge the hard science of astronomy with the soft science of cultural meaning, proving that the two were inseparable. These pioneers and others like them performed a vital rescue mission. They moved the entire subject from the fringes of speculation into the legitimate, interdisciplinary field we now call archaeoastronomy, a rigorous dialogue between archaeology, astronomy, and anthropology. Today, their legacy is amplified by tools they could scarcely have dreamed of. Three-dimensional laser scanning maps every fissure of a monument, creating perfect digital models. Satellite imagery reveals vast geoglyphs and landscape alignments invisible from the ground. Advanced computer simulations can rewind the sky over any location for thousands of years, allowing us to test alignment theories with pixel-perfect precision. Time and again, this technology confirms the intentionality of the ancients, verifying that a window was meant to frame a specific star or that an avenue was engineered for a solstice sunset. This modern revival is not about uncovering evidence for lost super-civilizations or ancient astronauts. It is a far more profound and humanistic endeavor. It is the recovery of a sophisticated, holistic mode of thought that our modern world has largely forgotten, a way of seeing that did not separate art from science or spirituality from geometry. By proving the deliberate cosmic intent behind these sites, archaeoastronomy offers a powerful corrective to a narrow, materialist view of history. It reveals our ancestors not as primitive beings struggling for survival, but as brilliant philosophers of space and time who sought to build their deepest understandings into the very landscape. This rediscovery does not end with academic papers. It inspires a new generation to stand before a stone circle or a pyramid not as a ruin but as a question. It invites us to look at these old stones with fresh, wondering eyes, to see in them a mirror reflecting our own enduring human desire to find our place in the vast, beautiful, and intelligently patterned cosmos. The philosophical core of this cosmic language found its most articulate expression in the sun-drenched courtyards of ancient Greece. A community of thinkers gathered around the figure of Pythagoras, and they proposed a breathtakingly simple yet profound idea that all is number. For the Pythagoreans, the universe was not a chaotic place. It was a magnificent, ordered structure built from geometric forms and harmonic ratios. They saw a direct, vibrating connection between the pluck of a lyre string and the motion of a distant planet. When they discovered that pleasing musical intervals, like the perfect fifth, were produced by simple whole number ratios of string lengths, they believed they had uncovered a fundamental truth. This harmony of sound, they reasoned, must also govern the harmony of the cosmos itself. They envisioned the planets moving in their orbits not in silence, but each emitting a unique tone based on its speed and distance, together creating a celestial symphony they called the music of the spheres, an inaudible song of perfect mathematical order that only the purified soul could hear. This was not merely abstract philosophy, it was a blueprint for sacred living and building. If the cosmos was constructed from harmonic geometry, then human creations, especially temples, should resonate with that same divine mathematics. This Pythagorean vision of a number-infused universe flowed like an underground river through Western esoteric thought, surfacing centuries later in the most ambitious architectural projects of the medieval world. The Gothic cathedral is its ultimate stone and glass manifesto. Look at the floor plan of Chartres or Notre Dame. You will find the square and the circle, the earthly and the heavenly, woven together. The soaring height of the nave is not random grandeur. It is calculated using ratios like the square root of 2 or the golden section. The radiant rose window is a complex mandala of geometric tracery, designed to filter sunlight into a kaleidoscope of sacred color and form. Every arch, every vault, every proportion was a conscious attempt to use mathematical harmony as a spiritual technology. The goal was to lift the gaze and the soul heavenward, to make the invisible music of the spheres almost visible and tangible within the sacred space. The building itself was a prayer in geometry, an instrument for tuning human consciousness to a higher, more harmonious frequency. This reveals the lost science as something far more active than passive observation. It was about participation. By constructing a monument or a temple based on these universal ratios, the ancient architect was not just mapping the cosmos. They were composing a single, sustained note within a grand cosmic symphony. They aimed to create resonant spaces that could, in a sense, heal, enlighten, and connect. There is a reason we feel a sense of peace and awe in certain ancient structures, a quieting of the mind that modern research sometimes links to the effects of specific proportions and resonant acoustics. This mathematical spirituality points to a unified world, now foreign to us, one where the physical and the metaphysical were not separate realms, but different expressions of the same numerical and geometric reality. A stone was not just a material, it was a frozen chord. A temple was not just a building, it was a crystallized hymn. Perhaps most intriguingly, this ancient intuition finds a startling echo in our most advanced modern physics. The quest for a grand unified theory, a single elegant mathematical framework that explains all forces in the universe, is not so different from the Pythagorean dream of a cosmos built from number. When a physicist describes the fabric of space-time or the vibrations of superstrings, they are speaking a language of geometry and harmony that would have felt deeply familiar to those ancient philosophers. This parallel suggests we may be circling back with infinitely more precise instruments to a profound truth our ancestors sensed, that at the heart of reality lies not chaos, but a beautiful, intelligible, and perhaps even musical order. The stones they left behind are not just ruins, they are invitations to listen for that music once more. That intuitive sense of a cosmic symphony leads to an even grander architectural scale, one that encompasses not just a single temple or city, but the entire planet. Step back, far back, and look at a map of the world's most enigmatic ancient sites. A startling pattern emerges, one that suggests our ancestors may have been engaged in the most ambitious project imaginable, treating the Earth itself as their ultimate monument. This is the realm of sacred geography and global geodesy, the idea that key sites were deliberately positioned on a vast, invisible geometric grid spanning the globe. The evidence begins with a single, staggering coordinate. The Great Pyramid of Giza does not sit at a random spot in the desert. It is positioned almost exactly at the intersection of the longest land meridian, the line of longitude that passes over the most continental landmass, and the longest land parallel, the line of latitude that does the same. This means the pyramid sits at a unique geometric center of the Earth's inhabited land. Is this a profound coincidence, or a deliberate piece of planetary cartography etched in stone? The connections grow more intricate. Measure the distances between certain iconic sites. Some researchers note that the distance from the Great Pyramid to the mysterious Moai statues of Easter Island is 1/3 of the planet's circumference. The distance from the pyramid to the temple complex of Angkor Wat in Cambodia appears to be the same. These are not rough estimates, but precise harmonic fractions of the Earth's size. Even more compelling are the alignments along great circles, the largest possible circles that can be drawn around a sphere. One famous proposed great circle, often called the equator of the ancient world, passes through Giza, Easter Island, the Nazca Lines in Peru, and the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley. Another aligns sacred sites across Europe and the Middle East. If these alignments hold, they point to a knowledge that shatters conventional history, an understanding of the Earth as a spherical body, and the ability to measure its dimensions with astonishing accuracy, long before Eratosthenes is said to have calculated the planet's circumference in ancient Greece. This field of study is fiercely controversial, and mainstream scholarship rightly points to the statistical likelihood of finding some patterns among thousands of ancient sites. Yet the precision and repetition of certain numbers and angles give one pause. It suggests the possibility, however remote, of a prehistoric civilization with a unified vision. Imagine a culture, perhaps one lost to the great floods of legend, that achieved a high level of geodetic science. Their master surveyors could have traveled the world, establishing primary nodes at specific harmonic points on the globe. Later cultures, perhaps inheriting fragments of this knowledge or intuitively sensing the power of these locations, built their own temples and monuments atop these same energetic or geometric anchors. In this view, Stonehenge, the pyramids, and Angkor Wat are not isolated wonders, but connected terminals in a vast, ancient network, a planetary circuit board constructed to channel or stabilize terrestrial energies. This transforms the lost science from a local practice of aligning with the sky into a global project of aligning the Earth itself. It would represent the ultimate application of cosmic geometry, a staggering act of planetary engineering where the entire world became a sacred site, tuned like a giant resonator to the frequencies of the cosmos. Whether you see this as literal history or a powerful metaphor, it challenges our deepest assumptions. It asks us to consider if our ancestors saw their responsibility not just to build in harmony with the Earth, but to actively participate in its cosmic alignment, weaving a geometric web of stone across continents to harmonize the very ground beneath our feet with the infinite dance of the stars above. But a global grid of stone implies a unified purpose, one that reaches beyond mapping and into the very mind of the participant. Why does the hushed space of a Gothic cathedral, with its soaring vaults and stained glass light, feel so fundamentally different from the fluorescent buzz of a modern office building? The difference is not merely aesthetic, it is psychological, and the lost science of cosmic geometry may be its original blueprint. Environmental psychology now confirms what ancient builders seemed to intuit, that the spaces we inhabit directly shape how we think, feel, and perceive the world. Specific architectural elements act as subtle levers on consciousness. Consider the use of fractal patterns, those intricate designs that repeat at different scales, found in the branching of trees, the flow of rivers, and remarkably, in the carved stone lace of Celtic knots or the geometric tilework of Islamic mosques. Our brains are naturally drawn to these patterns, which induce a mild, calming focus, a sense of being in an environment that is complex yet deeply ordered. Then there is the powerful effect of scale and light. A high, vaulted ceiling can trigger a sense of awe and humility, shifting our attention from petty concerns to larger, more abstract thoughts. Directional light, especially when it is rare and dramatic, commands attention completely. A chamber that is dark for 364 days of the year, then suddenly pierced by a single, brilliant beam of solstice sunrise, does not just mark a date. It creates a moment of overwhelming emotional and sensory impact, a shared experience of wonder that forges a powerful, visceral connection between the participant, the community, and the cosmic cycle itself. This was no accident. It was a sophisticated form of psychotropic architecture, a technology of consciousness built from stone and sunlight. The monuments were not passive symbols of a distant cosmic order. They were active, immersive machines designed to help people experience that order directly. By engineering an environment that induced awe, quieted the everyday mind, and focused awareness, the ancient builders created the ideal conditions for ritual, for healing practices, or for states of divination. The architecture itself became a guide, leading the participant from ordinary awareness into a non-ordinary state of reality, where the boundaries between self, community, and cosmos could feel beautifully dissolved. This function represents a profound loss in most modern design, which often prioritizes efficiency and cost over our innate psychological needs, yet a rediscovery is quietly underway. The growing fields of wellness architecture and contemplative design are now returning to these ancient principles, creating spaces with intentional proportions, natural materials, and calibrated light to reduce stress and enhance mental clarity. In doing so, they are unknowingly echoing a 10,000-year-old understanding that to build a sacred space is to build a tool for transformation, a resonant chamber not just for sound, but for the human spirit itself. That architectural tuning of consciousness implies a lineage, a tradition passed down through generations. Yet what if that lineage was violently severed, not by slow cultural change, but by a single, world-shattering night? This brings us to one of the most persistent and provocative threads in the entire mystery, the Cataclysm Hypothesis. It suggests our story does not begin with the pyramids or Stonehenge, but with a global disaster that reset the human timeline. Around 12,800 years ago, geological and ice core records point to a sudden, brutal climatic shift known as the Younger Dryas period. The world, emerging from an ice age, plunged back into a deep freeze for over 1,000 years. The cause is still debated, but a leading theory involves a fragmented comet or asteroid striking the Earth's northern ice sheets. The impacts would have been apocalyptic, triggering firestorms, colossal floods, and a long, dark winter that could have decimated advanced human societies. Proponents of this view, like researcher Graham Hancock, argue this event did not just wipe out megafauna, it erased a civilization. Imagine a sophisticated maritime culture, possessing a deep understanding of astronomy, geometry, and global navigation, thriving during the warmer period before the impact. When the sky literally fell, survivors of this lost world scattered, carrying with them not just their lives but the core fragments of their knowledge. They became the civilizer gods of legend, appearing among emerging hunter-gatherer groups with the seeds of agriculture, architecture, and celestial science. This framework offers a powerful explanation for the most puzzling anomalies in our historical record. It addresses the sudden, seemingly inexplicable appearance of a site like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a stunning complex of carved stone pillars erected over 11,000 years ago, millennia before the wheel or settled farming. Who taught those hunter-gatherers to carve such precise megaliths, and why? The hypothesis suggests they were not inventing from scratch, but rebuilding from memory, attempting to preserve a cosmic order they had witnessed collapse. It also gives profound new weight to the world's flood myths. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the story of Noah, the tales of a great deluge from the Maya to the Aboriginal peoples of Australia are not mere allegories. They could be the cultural echoes of a real, traumatic memory, a global catastrophe that drowned coastal cities and reshaped continents, passed down as a warning for 10,000 years. In this light, the monuments we have explored take on a different, more poignant character. They are not first attempts but resilient rebuilds. The Great Pyramid, Stonehenge, Teotihuacan could be post-cataclysm projects, desperate and determined attempts by later cultures to re-anchor a shattered world to the stable cycles of the cosmos, using inherited blueprints from a lost teacher race. The shared language of alignment, the recurring geometric constants, the consistent choice of celestial targets like Orion or the Pleiades, all become fragments of a once unified instruction manual, now in tattered, localized editions. This view remains, without question, a highly controversial minority position within mainstream archaeology, which cites a lack of direct evidence for such a global civilization. Yet it compellingly addresses the haunting how behind our mystery. How could such sophisticated practice appear so widely? How could the same complex astronomical concepts emerge independently? The Cataclysm Hypothesis provides a narrative answer, framing the lost science not as a spontaneous human invention, but as a legacy, a desperate gift from a forgotten chapter of our own history. It transforms the monuments from achievements of early civilization into memorials of a far older one, beacons from a time before history, urging us to consider the breathtaking fragility of all we build and the stubborn, star-guided resilience of knowledge itself, even when its original architects are swallowed by the sea or the ice. Yet the flame of this knowledge, though dimmed, was never fully extinguished. It was kept alive through the long centuries, not in grand monuments, but in quiet libraries and secretive circles. Islamic scholars became its guardians, preserving and advancing the geometric works of ancient Greece, ensuring the language of sacred proportion survived the collapse of empires. Then, in the ferment of the Renaissance, that flame reignited with dazzling brilliance. This was not a rediscovery of lost blueprints, but a reawakening of the same profound intuition. Thinkers became obsessed with the idea that the universe was built on perfect, knowable principles, and that human genius could mirror them. Leonardo da Vinci's iconic Vitruvian Man is the perfect emblem of this revival. That drawing is far more than an anatomical study. It is a philosophical manifesto, placing a perfectly proportioned human figure simultaneously within a circle and a square. It declares that the human form itself is a microcosm, a living embodiment of the same geometric harmony that structures the cosmos. The circle of the heavens and the square of the earth find their meeting point within us. Across Europe, astronomers like Johannes Kepler were driven by a similar, deeply Pythagorean quest. He spent years trying to fit the orbits of the planets into a nested framework of the 5 perfect Platonic solids, convinced he could hear the geometric music of the spheres in their motion. Though his specific model proved incorrect, his relentless search for a hidden mathematical order in the heavens was a direct continuation of the ancient builder's quest for cosmic alignment. He was listening for the same symphony, just with new instruments. This esoteric river also flowed through the hidden channels of secret societies. For the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons, the tools of the ancient architect became the central symbols of a moral and spiritual path. The square represented virtue and earthly conduct. The compass symbolized the mind's reach toward the divine and the circling heavens. The plumb line stood for integrity, the inner alignment of the soul. Their lodges were not just meeting rooms, they were deliberately designed as symbolic representations of Solomon's temple, the legendary archetype of a structure built with divine wisdom and geometric perfection. To enter a lodge was to symbolically enter that perfected cosmic blueprint, to participate in a ritual recreation of sacred space. In this way, the great public science of cosmic alignment transformed. It evolved from a cultural project that shaped entire cities into an inner, individual pursuit. The alignment was no longer between a temple corridor and a star, but between the individual soul and a perceived divine order. The principles of sacred geometry became a path to personal enlightenment, a way to square one's own character and compass one's own spirit toward a higher harmony. This underground tradition performed a vital, quiet service. It kept the embers of an ancient worldview glowing, maintaining the essential link between geometric perfection and spiritual aspiration, carrying it like a whispered secret across the threshold into our modern era. That whispered secret of harmony now echoes in the laboratories and design studios of our own time. The ancient impulse to learn from the patterns of the cosmos finds a direct parallel in a powerful modern movement called biomimicry. This is the conscious emulation of nature's genius, where engineers study the curve of a humpback whale's fin to design more efficient wind turbines, or where architects examine the self-cooling mounds of termites to inspire sustainable buildings. In a profound sense, the lost science of cosmic geometry was humanity's first great venture into biomimicry. Our ancestors were not copying the shell of a snail, but the very architecture of the heavens and the growth patterns found throughout the natural world. They looked at the spiral of a galaxy, the branching of a tree, and the harmonic intervals of sound, and asked a timeless question. How can we build a world that resonates with this deeper, elegant order? Today, we are asking that same question with renewed urgency, and the answers are leading us back to principles that would feel deeply familiar to a master builder from Teotihuacan or a Pythagorean philosopher. Modern sustainable design is, in essence, rediscovering the wisdom of integration. Take passive solar design, the art of positioning a building to maximize natural heating and cooling from the sun. This is not a new technology, it is the direct application of ancient solar orientation. Just as a cliff dwelling in Mesa Verde was carved to capture the low winter sun and shade itself from the high summer heat, contemporary architects use sophisticated software to model the sun's path, designing overhangs, window placements, and thermal mass walls that dramatically reduce energy needs. The goal is identical: to create a comfortable shelter that is in a constant, passive conversation with the star that powers our world. Then there is the concept of biophilic design, which seeks to satisfy our innate human need to connect with nature and natural processes. This goes beyond placing a potted plant in a corner. It involves using materials, shapes, and spatial arrangements that subconsciously remind us of the natural environments in which we evolved. A ceiling with a fractal-like pattern, a room with a central column that evokes a tree trunk, or the deliberate use of dappled, filtered light, all tap into the same psychological principles that made a forest grove or a sun-dappled cave feel like a sacred space. This is sacred geometry applied not for ritual, but for mental health and cognitive restoration, creating spaces that reduce stress and foster well-being by reconnecting us to those primal, harmonious patterns. We are also relearning the power of acoustics and light as active design elements. Concert halls are engineered with shapes that diffuse sound perfectly, much like the resonant chambers of ancient tombs. Hospitals are incorporating circadian lighting systems that mimic the natural progression of daylight, helping to regulate patient sleep cycles and improve recovery, a technological echo of the profound psychological impact of a solstice beam in a dark chamber. The lost science teaches us that a building is not just a container for human activity, it is an active participant in that activity. It can either disconnect us from the rhythms of the earth and sky, or it can thoughtfully reconnect us. The modern problems of environmental stress, resource depletion, and a pervasive sense of disconnection in our urban landscapes are, at their core, failures of integration. We have built a world that often dominates its environment rather than harmonizing with it. The ancient blueprint offers a corrective, a vision of holistic design where every choice, from the building's orientation to its proportions to its materiality, is considered in relation to a larger whole, the local ecosystem, the path of the sun, and the human spirit within. This is not about abandoning steel and glass to rebuild with stone, but about rediscovering the integrative thinking behind the stone. By looking back at this lost science, we are not retreating into the past. We are recovering a vital piece of our own intelligence, a way of seeing that understands true innovation is not about imposing our will on nature, but about learning to speak its elegant, sustainable language. Even with all we have uncovered, the most tantalizing chapters of this story may still be locked away, hidden within the very stones we thought we understood. Recent muon tomography scans of the Great Pyramid have sent shockwaves through the field, revealing tantalizing evidence of large, unexplained voids deep within its structure. These are not the known chambers, but spaces that have remained sealed for over 4,000 years. What could they possibly contain? The immediate speculation ranges from undiscovered burial chambers to repositories of sacred knowledge, perhaps even the original builder's own tools or records. This is no longer the realm of fringe theory, but of hard physics, using cosmic rays to peer through millions of tons of stone. It is a powerful reminder that our greatest ancient monuments are still, in many ways, unexplored territory. The mystery extends far beyond Egypt. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, a corroded bronze artifact recovered from an ancient shipwreck. For decades it was a curiosity, until advanced imaging revealed it to be an astonishingly complex analog computer, with precisely interlocking gears designed to predict lunar phases, solar eclipses, and the positions of planets. This single device, dating to around 200 years before the Common Era, rewrites our understanding of ancient Greek technological capability. It proves they could mechanize their celestial knowledge, turning astronomical predictions into a turn of a hand crank. Yet its exact purpose and the identity of its genius creator remain lost to time. How many other such devices, perhaps made of wood or less durable materials, have simply vanished? Then there are the physical puzzles that defy easy explanation. At Baalbek in Lebanon, the trilithon consists of 3 limestone blocks, each weighing an estimated 800 tons, positioned high in a temple wall. At Ollantaytambo in Peru, massive pink granite monoliths were somehow transported across a river valley and up a steep mountainside. The conventional explanations of ramps, ropes, and log rollers begin to strain under such staggering weight and precision. The exact methods, the orchestration of labor, the engineering insights, these details form a silent, gaping hole in our historical narrative. These are not minor gaps, they are chasms in our understanding. Each unsolved puzzle whispers the same profound, lingering question. Was this global phenomenon of cosmic alignment simply the product of brilliant, isolated minds, or does it point toward a shared, now vanished source of knowledge? The consistency is haunting. It is the difference between a dozen composers independently writing the same symphony and the possibility they were all working from a lost original score. Every new technological advance becomes a key for these ancient locks. Ground-penetrating radar maps subterranean structures without lifting a single shovelful of earth. Satellite imagery and LiDAR strip away jungle canopy to reveal vast, hidden city grids. Artificial intelligence now sifts through mountains of archaeological data, searching for patterns in site placement or architectural ratios that might elude the human eye. The lost science is not a closed book gathering dust on a shelf. It is an active, vibrant investigation, a grand detective story spanning the globe and all of human history. Each new discovery, each scanned void or deciphered inscription, does not simply provide an answer. It peels back a layer to reveal even deeper, more fascinating questions beneath. This ongoing quest democratizes history itself. It invites everyone from the PhD in a university lab to the curious amateur analyzing satellite photos at home to become a sleuth in humanity's greatest mystery. We are all now contributing piece by piece, star by star, to the rewriting of our own early story, a story that is still being uncovered, one astonishing stone at a time. The panorama of human ingenuity this journey reveals stretches the very imagination. From the gnomon's first shadow to the silent resonance of a tuned chamber, we have witnessed stone's whisper of solstices, temples mirror the constellations, and sacred geometry encode what philosophers called the music of the spheres. This was never primitive superstition. It stands as a sophisticated, holistic science, a unified worldview that wove astronomy, mathematics, geomancy, and psychology into a single, magnificent tapestry. These builders saw no divide between the sacred and the scientific. For them, measuring a star's path was an act of devotion, and carving a harmonic proportion was a prayer made solid. This profound synthesis of knowledge challenges our linear narrative of progress, suggesting that ancient minds achieved a coherence of understanding from which our specialized modern world has become curiously disconnected. The key takeaway here is not about proving the existence of ancient astronauts or a single lost super-civilization. It is about recognizing a fundamentally different mode of knowing, one that sought connection over control, harmony over extraction, and meaning alongside measurement. As we face our own global challenges, from environmental stress to a deep sense of societal disconnection, this ancient wisdom calls to us across the millennia. It invites us to reconsider how we build our world, urging a reharmonization with the natural and cosmic orders we are an inseparable part of. Reflect for a moment on how these ideas might shift your own perception. The next time you see an old stone circle on a hill, or even feel a sense of peace in a beautifully proportioned space, consider the silent language it may be speaking. This exploration is just the beginning. If you found this journey as fascinating as I did, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the world's greatest historical mysteries. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me which monument's alignment or hidden purpose intrigues you the most. The stones are waiting, their story is far from over, and every new look can be the start of your own discovery.